Do you like books? I mean, really, really like books? Then you're in the right place. Each week, your host, Sam Hankin, interviews the best of today's top-selling authors and the up-and-coming superstars of modern literature. This is The Avid Reader. Here is your host, Sam Hankin.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of The Avid Reader, brought to you by Wellington Square Bookshop. Our guest today is Thomas Swimme, author of Cosmogenesis, an unveiling of the expanding universe. Published by Counterpoint, it'll be released on November 15th, at which time it'll be on the front table of my bookstore. So Brian's the author of The Hidden Heart of the Cosmos, The Universe is a Green Dragon. He's also the co-author of Manifesto for a Global Civilization with Matthew Fox, The Universe Story with Thomas Berry, and The Journey of the Universe with Mary Evelyn Tucker, all of whom are in this autobiographical work. But of course, the entire universe is in this autobiographical work anyway. So Brian is also the creator of 3 educational video series, Canonical to the Cosmos, Earth's Imagination, and the Powers of the Universe. And he hosted Journey of the Universe on PBS. And it's a lot of fun just to go to YouTube and watch his talks over the years as he and I both grow older and older. And we were saying before we started, you know, it's fun to watch him because he's like me. We're just so excited to be here. It's almost irritating. Maybe he doesn't want to be here with me specifically, but just here. Like, how the hell did this happen anyway? And we were talking about waking up, and it's nice that it's kind of like waking up and it's still Christmas morning, but it's hard to imagine how that can still be. So here we go. Once upon a time, a man named Brian, or a man named Sam, lived in a house that was so incredibly, incredibly small, it had no room for anything. It was so much smaller than a jail cell. It was so small that you couldn't put a chair or a couch or a piece of paper or a pen or a pencil or a spider web or a drop of water or anything. And then all of a sudden, the house starts getting bigger and bigger, and it had been darker than night, way darker than night. And then it gets lighter, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it gets so big that you lose your family members. No matter how hard you yell, you can't find them, and they go further and further away, and there's more and more rooms. And then maybe other houses begin to appear on your street, but you're not quite sure. You can only think of them out of the corner of your eye. You know, you turn to look and they're gone, like Pink Floyd and Comfortably Numb. And then there's more and more houses that you still couldn't see, houses that you think might have been filled with families having Christmas parties and opening presents. And then maybe a house where some little old lady is drinking tea with her cat swirling around her ankles. And then there's houses like with really sad people, and then other houses that no one lives in at all. They have furniture, but they're just dark and quiet and sad. And then there's some houses that just have really smart people just sitting there, not saying a word. And then you start wondering, wait a minute, maybe I'm the house and everything is inside of me. Or maybe my neighborhood was always here waiting for me to move in. Or maybe when I moved in my neighborhood, it began to appear. So this analogy, like most of mine, kind of sucks. But maybe the reason it sucks is because I don't really know enough to make a really good analogy. The last thing that might make this the perfect analogy is that I have only been talking to myself, in which case there is no nothing, there is no universe. The only thing that's here is me, and all the galaxies and stars and dark matter and dark energy and antimatter is all inside of my head, or I don't even exist at all. And the thing that makes me feel that I exist is something else entirely. But enough about me if it actually is me. So welcome, Brian. Thanks for putting up with me so far.
I love it. Boy, that's one of the most amusing narratives of the universe. Beautiful.
Well, I don't want to compliment myself. It sounds a little bit like some of your talks, at least in terms of the enthusiasm.
And also, yeah, the whole thing, expansion, a home in the beginning, a different home later on, and where'd the other homes go? Hey.
Well, the last part of it is the part that I've done so many of these. I've done like 1,000 interviews. When I interview an astrophysicist or a philosopher or a neuroscientist, a psychologist, a brain surgeon, they're all looking for like the seat of human consciousness.
Yeah.
The first thing I say is, what if this is a solipsistic universe and I'm just talking to no one, or you're talking to no one? One of us is here, the other one isn't. And they all get upset because I ruin their theories because they can't disprove what I'm positing.
Is that a serious contender for your allegiance, solipsism, or are you just arguing to argue?
Well, that would be a question I couldn't answer either. But I don't mean it capriciously or frivolously. It's just something that, like in my introduction, or even in your talks, where you're kind of correlated. Well, there you go. In your book, in Cosmogenesis, it's kind of like an autobiographical, and you're admixturing the universe and yourself. So
Yeah.
where am I? It's you and the universe. So where am I in your book?
I think I think that what I am trying to describe in terms of, say, my relationships in the universe, I think in some senses that's true of each person. I don't think of myself as different at that level. So, I mean, each of us is participating in the universe, but I don't. I really mean this seriously when I ask the question. It's like an existential question for you. Is solipsism an existential question?
Yes, because specific. Here's a way of looking at it. When you're describing in your book Sartre and nausea, and you talk about, I wrote it down. You wrote, the characters were revolted by the absurdity, the nauseating facticity of the little hairs growing out of skin. I was not revolted, I was spellbound. The sun's light was warming my skin. I had never once stopped a moment to reflect on this miraculous event. Human skin had the power to transform the physical photons of a star into something non-physical. So you have this feeling of rapture, and you use the term ecstatic a lot. But Sartre was, when I read the last pages of Nausea and the roots of the tree and all, I could understand how he would feel. It's too much. This is just too much stuff. So I guess those are the two balances, two ways of looking at things.
Yeah. I think they're both appropriate in certain ways. My kind of starting point is the universe itself as a whole. I have this criticism of starting with human consciousness. Like when you're saying you've interviewed a number of people and they're fascinated by the seed of consciousness. That's a fabulous question for sure. But I think it's a mistake, actually, to start with the human mind. Because if you start with the human mind, it's hard to get out of it. That's why I really meant the question about solipsism. I think of at least myself as really a more naive person. And I think we're in a moment that is similar to the pre-Socratics. So we're we're asking these very fundamental questions that that people like Descartes and Sartre, to a certain extent, couldn't ask. I mean, I think that's what blows my mind. I mean, the actual awareness of a 14 billion year evolving universe, that wasn't part of reality for Descartes. So so then he ends up with the famous dualism between matter and mind. But we know now that, I mean, and again, I mean, we know within the limits of scientific understanding, we know that matter constructed mind. And that sounds bizarre if you're stuck in a dualistic point of view. But after a while, you can kind of adjust to it, and it's pretty amazing. You know, those little particles at the beginning gave birth to our minds. I mean, in other words, that I met for myself, I'm at the level of like just astonishment. I'm not saying I can explain it. I'm just saying, just trying to take it in blows my mind, you know.
And that's, I've heard you say that. I've heard myself say that over and over again. What do you think it is that allows us, having been in 8 decades each, what is it that allows us to continue to feel this way? Why is it, as we say, we're still excited? What are we actually excited about?
Well, I think it's just as you said. It's that we're here. That the sheer fact of our existence is just blows us away, and we can do various things to kind of forget about that and get on with the practical things of life. That's fine, but every now and then, there's here, you'll love this. There's, I hope, I think you will. There are these Indians in South America, and indigenous group, and their conviction, I used to know the name of the group, but their conviction is that if we don't dwell on the immensities of the universe, we can't become human. I mean, I love that. I mean, I just love that. In other words, if we wrap ourselves up into some small project, like say Western civilization, I mean, or the Bank of America, then we're not going to really become a full human being. And that to me is, God, I just think it's thrilling. In other words, I'll give me one more thing. In other words, this is the kind of thing that keeps me astonished. There have been a lot of species, right? And 99% of them have gone extinct, over lifespan. But we've evaluated approximately how long each mammalian species exists. The approximate answer is 2.7 million years, around that. And in other words, if humans are just average mammals, then we've been around for 200,000 or 300,000 years. We've got another, 2.6 million years to live. And throughout, it's possible, throughout that entire time, we will be discovering what it means to be human. So right now, I'm just saying, I think part of our role is to be astonished,
I don't even want to respond to this, but because it'll bring both of us down. But the problem is that if you look at the way the world is right now, just starting with the lack of civil discourse, forgetting the economy, forgetting Ukraine, forgetting QAnon, in order to achieve what you're suggesting, we actually have to keep this planet somehow in one piece, whether it's from an asteroid or whether it's from climate change or whatever it is. All this is necessitated prior to anything that you've posited actually happening. There is a Bank of America.
Yeah.
It's there. You can't deny it.
Yeah.
So don't answer it.
No. Ask it again, would you? Because
Okay.
I coughed right at the crucial moment of your sentence. It's all my fault.
I've never had a crucial moment in any of my sentences. No, it was basic. Okay, you're saying we have this really long time ahead of us where we can develop the things that you and your colleagues and compatriots and friends want to, in terms of this organic mixture of humanity, the universe, and how it all essentially is one. But in order to achieve that, or even begin to achieve it, the planet has to continue to exist.
Yeah.
That's the question. It has to exist. If the planet stops existing, then you can't achieve your goal.
Well, I guess I'd want to broaden it out. I mean, I take the pessimism that you're referring to, but I want to deepen the pessimism and put in a larger context. I mean, you know, the Milky Way galaxy has at least 100 billion planets. And the estimate is it's around 300 million of them are Earth-like. Now, it's really easy to imagine that on a huge number of these Earth-like planets, life has emerged. Now, I don't know that's true, but I'm just saying we didn't know there was another planet in the universe until recently. You know, so we have to, I say, we've got to think in that context. And it may be that on all of these different planets, the adventure is taking place, and some of them will go extinct, and ours might be one of them. I agree, but at the same time, I have a sense of this movement forward. The universe is going somewhere, and it's going to get there. That's sort of my own, you know, faith. So it may not be Earth. I'm doing everything I can to make it happen here on Earth, and then you are too. But it's obviously nothing that we have knowledge of.
Yeah, I know. I've always felt that way. You know, all you can really do as one person is push things the right way. You're not really doing that much, but you're pushing it the right way. Yeah. You can push it the right way or the wrong way. And it's nice of you to be willing to hand off and give the key to this treasure chest to another race on another planet. But it's really hard for other people to allow their ego to be subsumed by this greater goal. But you're willing to do that. And I understand it because I feel the same way. But it's really hard to do that.
Yeah, it's really hard, really hard. Yeah.
Well, so what about if we switch around? Like my silly beginning, if you talk about the anthropic principle, you know, look, ice floats. If ice didn't float, you and I wouldn't be talking. The core of the earth spins. If it didn't, we wouldn't be here. We have ozone. So you got the whole Goldilocks thing. But we're here, you and I are talking because we can observe. If we couldn't observe, then we wouldn't be here. Whether you're talking about the Heisenberg principle or quantum mechanics or acceleration, all of those things. So how do you feel about that? Do we actually exist, or we exist simply because we're able to observe? Does the waveform collapse if we don't? Of course we do.
You know, again, I think my point of view is a simple one, but it's cosmological. I mean, once again, I start with the universe as a whole. Here would be one example, you know, from physics. In current mathematical cosmology, one of the favored theories about the birth of the universe is that we are a quantum fluctuation. And you know, you referred to Heisenberg. So when you have a particle emerge out of the vacuum, I mean, there's the real creation in the universe. You know, a proton emerges out of the vacuum, but it always emerges with an antiproton, an electron with an anti-electron, a positron. And so we observe this, and in part. So the theory is that there is this vast eruption out of the vacuum. But then, and here's the crucial point, there was a slight asymmetry that emerged as well. Namely, that for every billion plus one particles of ordinary matter, there were a billion particles of antimatter. So you have this vast canceling out. What remained was 1/billionth of the universe. I don't understand why the universe would have to bring forth 1 billion times more matter than it would need. I don't know. But my point is it eventuated in this creative process. uh, I interpret this. Here's what I call the cosmological interpretation. In other words, I'm not claiming this is science. I'm claiming this is a theory of the universe, namely that the universe has a sense of where it's going. And now this can be argued, but the fact is, when I began studying physics, the basic idea was that the planets, the stars, and so forth came about from accidental encounters. And now that we realize we've only been around for 14 billion years, there's no way anything like a single cell could come about accidentally. This is at least one part where all mathematical cosmologists agree. So there must be some inner dynamic taking place in the universe that is bringing forth order. So I take that and I scale it up to the universe as a whole and say there's a kind of, some kind of form of creativity that actually has aims in mind. Now, I'm not saying it's deterministic. I'm saying there are aims in mind. And one of them, and here's the part where I'm get back to your first point. One of the aims the universe had was to become aware of itself. And so we in a certain sense, if you go back to the birth of the universe and you just have elementary particles, all right, already in the intrinsic interaction we call the strong nuclear interaction, already there is the presence of stars. Because if it were different way back then, there would have been no stars. So I'm trying to say that there are ways in which the future is layered into the moment. And so one of the, I think, thrilling speculations about the universe is that from the beginning, it was aiming at a number of things, one of which was to become aware of itself. And maybe it happens in all kinds of ways, but on planet Earth, it happened with humans. So I see that we have the possibility of working out a cosmological meaning to our existence.
I've seen some of your talks and in which religion is brought up, and you refer, the pronoun you use for the universe is it's, but you give it a purpose. It has an awareness of its own existence. And so obviously over the years, many people have asked you about God. And I've never worried too much about calling God, but there seems to me in my mind exactly the same feeling as I said earlier, and you just kind of said, is that it's moving somewhere. It's moving towards something. But then again, that implies what the hell could it be moving toward if it's everything, Is it moving towards hopefully good, something good? Is it like Star Wars and it's moving for a good force, the bad, if it's moving, what is it moving within? It's becoming aware within the context, within, it's not a bell jar. The universe is, it's so hard to talk to you because it's so hard to frame questions so that they make any kind of sense at all, because they're the biggest questions in the world.
Yeah.
In a sense, it's the only question. There's only one question. And so, okay, I guess what I'm trying to ask you, if it has a purpose, it has an awareness, and it's moving towards something, what could that something possibly be?
I will answer that question by reminding us, by us I mean Sam and Brian, that obviously I don't know, and so we we speculate, and there are some things, and our speculation is based, at least scientifically, on what has taken place already, and there may be other forms of knowing that we call, intuitive, but even leaving that aside right now and just looking at what has happened. So if we look at the history of the universe, here's one thing we see, that the universe seems to be really concerned about relationships and deepening relationships. So like here's the amazing thing to me is if you go back in time to the early universe, it just consisted of elementary particles, like, billions of times too small for us to even see, but we've learned a lot about them. So these little elementary particles are flashing this way and that, and they construct the galaxies, stars, nebula, all this fantastic stuff. This is done by the elementary particles. In other words, nothing from the outside universe came in. What they did was they entered into relationships, and more complex entities emerged with new qualities. That is, to me, that's what the universe is about. So that would be a gigantic example. Here's another one. For 2 billion years, life on Earth was unicellular, so that every living entity was smaller than the sharp end of a little pin. And what did they do? They started to hang out with each other. They started to form bonds and relationships. And then suddenly we have elephants and tigers. Suddenly, it took a billion years, but nevertheless, you see my point.
Yes.
What I want to emphasize, because I do it for myself. Nothing came here, from Andromeda Galaxy or any other place. It was simply entities deepening their relationships. And now we go and we get to the human. Like, wow, it's another explosion of creativity that comes from our deepening relationships.
It's like one talk where you talk about we've created a phylum. It's like, it's like, we're just chordata. We just have this spinal cord, but at the same time, it's interesting now. How it used to be King Philip comes of fairly good stock. Remember when you learned that?
No.
The mnemonic device, King Philip comes of fairly good stock.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah.
Well, now they have now on Wikipedia, the cone of life it starts with life, and then domain, and then kingdom. I'm going, what? Oh, they got it right. It starts with the top. The domain is, in my mind, the place where it is, one of your many planets and many of the. So now it's just.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
I didn't know it either till last night.
That's really cool.
I may be wrong in interpreting it, but that's the way I interpreted it.
Yeah,
makes sense.
I love it. Yeah.
Well, if we get down to you start out as basically a hard scientist, you do this incredible PhD program, you have a great advisor, the book weaves in and out between you and your lovely wife and all the people you meet and your son. And then all of a sudden we're talking to Newton, we're talking to Einstein, we're talking to Dirac, we're talking to one of my favorite, Eddington. And it's like, okay, these guys are here too. And then you even you're hanging out with Einstein, but you're also saying, you kind of screwed up.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good thing to talk about. Let's talk about how Einstein screwed up. And he even admitted he did.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite ideas. It's not mine, but I just love the idea. I love it. But I wonder sometimes if I made it too technical. I don't know.
No, not at all.
No? Okay, great. Because it is, like I can't quote Wittgenstein word for word, but knowing you, I know that you enjoyed reading that in there, but I can paraphrase it. And it's basically Wittgenstein is saying that, the fundamental problem with with the modern form of knowledge is that we think we understand natural laws. We think that the scientific equations we've come up with explain natural forces. And like when I was in college and in grad school and stuff, if I had read that, I'd go like, what? Another ridiculous philosopher? What are you talking about? It's because I was under the spell of what he was criticizing. And and you hear this all the time. It's that what we really can count on is scientific knowledge of the laws of the universe. I kind of love that direction, but there is a major problem, and that is, and this was recognized by Wittgenstein, it was recognized by Alfred North Whitehead, it was recognized by Charles Sanders Peirce. These are brilliant minds, but it has completely escaped the vast majority of modern scientists. I include myself. I'm trying to say what we're talking about here is really large, really is. And the only way I can express it is by telling you a quick story from my own life. And that was when, I was on a fishing trip with my father. I was in the last year of my doctoral studies. He was getting the horses. We were going to go down to the Fraser River, and just to spend a few minutes relaxing, I started dropping a rock, and it's a simple thing. I picked up a rock and I dropped it, but if you do it about 100 times in a row, it's something like what the Buddhists experience in meditation. The automaticity of things drops away. So I about the 100th time, I half aware of what I was doing, I dropped it. And then I asked the question, why did it fall to the earth? Now my field is gravity. That's what I studied. And so the natural action would be, it falls because of gravity. It falls because of gravity. But here's the problem. The equations of gravity speak of the pathway an object will take under gravity. They don't speak of why the rock will drop. And that the why question, why? You say, it's pulled by gravity. Those are just words. What science has done has established an incredible knowledge of the geometry of gravity, but not why. Why is it? I was at a lecture once. This also gets at it too. I know I'm kind of vague in my response, but it's because it's so important. I was at a lecture once, listening to a philosopher from MIT, Noam Chomsky. All right, so I think we can rely on him. But
what a name drop! You're such a name dropper.
Only because I need his authority to make this next point. He said this. He said Newton made Noam Chomsky said Newton made an alarming statement once. He said that if anyone thinks my equations explain gravity, they're idiots. Now that's Noam Chomsky. And what Newton was saying was the same thing. And I've seen this in his notes. He one time ponders, when I release a rock, why doesn't it go sideways? Okay, why doesn't it go sideways? So in a sense, what I'm saying is like so obvious. There's no why there, but what we've done is we've been captured by the equations, and then we identify the equations with reality. And it gives us a false sense of confidence that we know the ultimate nature of things. We do not know the ultimate nature of things, not even close. You see, that's the whole point of the mistake Einstein made. Einstein, like almost every other modern scientist, took his equations to be reality. He made that statement as well. So what I'm trying to say is that by going more deeply into it, through the reflections of these philosophers I've named, we realize, wow, we really are in something like a mystery that we have glimmers of understanding, but to think we've nailed it down closes our minds down to something that is a disease that's called scientism. So there's my long reply.
It's always been fascinating to me what you've said about this kind of illusion almost, but my favorite thing that Einstein ever really actually said was, the cosmological constant is the biggest blunder of my life. I mean, it's so cool that failure can be the most successful thing that you've ever said. You know, it's like, yeah, because never mind, I'll stop there. I was going to tell you a story about gravity.
I love that. I love the reference to Einstein there. He had tremendous humility, but I want to hear your story.
Okay, so I have the weirdest bookstore in the world. I'll do things like buy fake eyeballs and put them behind books. So when they take the book out, there's an eyeball looking at them, or severed fingers. But in the front desk, I have I have a 2 kilogram bar of silver. I have bismuth, I have lead, I have tin, I have titanium, I have small pieces of gold. I have, but the thing that goes back to exactly what you're doing with your dad is, I have a 10-pound ingot of pure copper and a 20-pound ingot of pure copper. So when kids come in, which is the only reason I have the bookstore really, when they come in, they say, here, hold this. And I got to be careful because they don't think what they're going to feel is what they feel. So I have to always hold underneath.
Yeah.
And they're astonished. And after they can't believe it, then I'll give them the 20-pound one. And then the funny part about you and me is that when I do it, I am as astonished as they are. Here's 20 pounds of copper. Why does it want to leave my hand?
Yeah.
But it's like, it's kind of like the obverse of Sartre. You know, you look at a tree. I remember I was in an altered state of mind at the time, but I looked at this oak tree and it was radiating this essence of oakness at me.
Yeah.
It was almost too much. And when
Yeah.
you hold 20 pounds of copper in your hand, it's almost too much, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. It is too much. It is too much. I mean, just to go to Whitehead, Alfred North Whitehead, on that point, his word for it is, we need to negative prehension. It's a technical term, but we're overwhelmed by everything that's radiating to us, and we have to cut out the vast majority of it, right? And that is just like you're saying. That's a perfect example of why we need to criticize scientism, right? Because it cuts out so much that we actually could let in. But I love the story of the oak tree, the radiance. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I feel like, oh, I don't want to sound like Brian.
I don't blame you.
But it's like this oak tree was telling me this. It
Yeah.
was telling me this, and the copper is it's informing you. It is informing you as you hold it. It is informing you. It's giving you information about itself, and it's telling you what it's doing. It has nothing to do with science, does it?
Well, no, hold on. Now, just
Okay.
now, obviously, when we talk about elementary particles, we go down to the quantum realm, things have never reached a consensus. So there are a variety of interpretations, right? And the one I like it speaks of excuse me, the particles are momentary excitations of the quantum field. Now, we don't know what the quantum field is, so we're not explaining a particle here, but what we're focusing on is the temporal aspect. They flash, and then they reassemble and they flash again, so that even though you take that lump of copper, right? Now just think, these incredible minds like, Aristotle and Plato and Thomas Aquinas and René Descartes, they didn't know anything about the quantum realm. What we know, this part, all physicists would agree to, is that it's this seething action. And the one part that I'm adding in this interpretation is that it's a seething action that radiates out. Now it's obvious it's doing that, but what I'm trying to say is that it's like what you said. It's like it has a desire, not a human desire, but an impulse. Let's call it an impulse to radiate. Now here's a statement from the second law of thermodynamics. Again, I like to emphasize the fact that when I say something that all scientists agree to, I bring it out because a lot of it is so hard to believe. Here is a statement. Every entity in the universe is radiating. Even that you have an ice cube, all right? An ice cube is radiating. Everything is. That is the second law. And so that in the darkest room that you have a fork and that you can't see it, it's radiating. So I like to think of that as the way in which at the deepest level in the universe, there's a desire to connect, to communicate, or another way of saying is to express oneself. Our desire is so great to give birth to who we are, to say that and to be received by others. I'm okay. Sorry.
It's funny that, I was just thinking the same thing that you were just thinking when you're going, I'm talking too long. As we're talking, I don't know if the same thing happens with you. There's all these other questions in my head that I want to ask you, but then by the time you're done, where have they all gone? Like, because I wanted to go back to the caves and you being scared of going into caves and being, claustrophobic, and then that went away. And then something else came up and that went away. Oh, and then the other thing, the most profound thing in your entire book is your wife is the most patient person in the entire universe.
That's true.
That's what I took away from the book.
It's true. And she doesn't even remind me of it.
When you decided not to go to Boston, I was thinking, what the hell is wrong with you? Seriously.
I agree. Yeah, I think all just like you say, these possibilities surface and then they go away, and you go, God, what was I thinking?
And the other thing I was going to say is I was going to joke about, everything about you is the universe. Look at every book, every TV show, whatever. It's all the universe. It's just me and the universe. And then I was thinking, it reminds me so much of Carl Sagan. Same thing, and billions and billions, and we're talking billions and trillions. And it reminds me of, I like the way you described his letter back to you. What'd you say was snappy or peppy? Because that's how he was. What was the word you used, the adjective? It was
pert. Was it pert?
No, it wasn't curt. It was the opposite. It was like all peppy or something like that. Like
I don't remember the word, but I remember
it was a good word because it reminded me so much of him. Then I was thinking, why didn't? Yeah, you could have gone and hung out with him.
I know. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. You just bring up this longing I had, and Vladimir Arnold. I mean, he's a spectacular mathematician in Moscow, and
yeah.
That too. I wonder, wow, is that a mistake?
Hey, what do you do with all that stuff? I mean, I have all these things that I could regret, I could feel guilty about, I could feel anxious about, I could worry about. There's so many of these negative emotions. Like right now, I didn't mean to do it, but I mean, yes, I think back to opportunities I had that I didn't take, or opportunities that presented that I didn't realize at the time. This has nothing to do with your book, but I'm just thinking about it. Like you were just looking back, and while you're looking back, I am too, at things we could have done. Maybe it's like the movie Sliding Doors. You know, when in my introduction, when I'm talking a little bit about the multiverse, maybe as you say about quantum fluctuations, each moment, each nanosecond that we're speaking, we just keep splitting off and splitting off.
Yeah, my own preference in interpreting the universe is to say that failure is real. It's a real possibility, and mistake. It's also possible to make mistakes. I mean, but I also think that, and they here once again, this is the advantage of thinking cosmologically. I already said one time that layered into the early universe was the propensity to form stars. Well, my interpretation of that is that the way in which the particles are drawn to each other, the strength of that draw carries the future. And I told you already, but it's just to say it again. This is something that we're really confident of, that if the strength had been different, either way, too strong or too weak,
right,
it wouldn't have happened. So I feel, now we get really kind of personal, but nevertheless, it's still based on a scientific reflection. I feel that the universe actually commissions us. I mean, that's the word, commissions. So that if we're responding, so many things can be fascinating for us, but if we respond to the one that is aligned with the universe, there's a deep sense of fulfillment and peace that comes. So even though I'm aware of the mistakes I've made, and maybe not enough, and maybe not all of them, but my point is, I'm also aware that I made some good decisions that led to happiness and peace.
Yeah, and the thing that's incredible, I don't know if I could do it with this book, which I keep calling an autobiography, which it kind of is that you expose so much of yourself that other people might not want. And I normally wouldn't even say this, but you said it in your book about drinking.
Yeah.
You didn't have to tell us that, but you decided, okay, this is going to be important for me, and you weave it into your understanding not only of your colleagues, your wife, the universe. And it's like, okay, this makes sense to me, but I have no idea why it makes sense. Why does?
Well, yeah, but even there, I mean, everything I wrote about as a way of reflecting on the universe as a whole. So the universe as a whole expresses itself in each of its parts. Now that whole part relationship is something that science is really just beginning to look at with what we call complexity science. We focus exclusively on the parts so much, and that's okay. We learn tons, but it's the relationship between the whole and the part. So that with my incipient alcoholism, I didn't say this in the book, but I was trying to imply it, that it was the only way I could wake up to the fact that I wasn't really on my path. The only way was to become miserable. And so the alcohol was a way of like keeping in a university system. I love the University of Puget Sound, where I worked. I mean, I really did, but it wasn't. I had a different destiny that was trying to make itself known to me, and so the alcohol and all of that was necessary. I mean, it got to a point where, you know, I either I would close down all of these feelings I had about the universe and live out a different kind of life, or I die young, you know, from the alcohol. So it wasn't. Now, I assume you read my prologue. I mean, didn't you like the phrase autocosmology?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a combination of autobiography and cosmology, but it's not really about. I'm not really telling the story of my life. I'm trying to tell the story of the universe.
Well, you know, sometimes it reminded me of like Cosmic Comics by Italo Calvino.
Yeah, right.
One of my very favorite books in the world.
Absolutely.
Kind of like my introduction. Yeah, because it's much better to talk about a little old lady with a cat swirling around her ankles drinking tea than it is to, you know, it's much easier to understand the universe that way.
Yeah. Personalize it.
Yeah. So well, you did in the book, because you distilled all of your misery and all the misery of the universe into your broken furnace in the basement. And then you have your orange juice and vodka, and then your vodka and orange juice, and then your vodka. And then you go down there. Were you really down there laying on mouse turds?
Oh yeah, no, all of that is real.
Really? That was horrible.
Well, yeah, it was, yeah. What it was so great is that, you know, so we left the town and so forth, but one of my friends bought the house, not for me, but, you know, and I go back over there like one time and it all comes back, you know, and luckily the guy I criticized in the basement has died, so I don't have to deal with that.
Well, look, but basically you will always be dealing with him, and he'll always be dealing with you if your theory of the universe is correct.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Still radiating, you know, and he always
absolutely. Yeah. That dialogue will continue.
Yeah. It's the reason why you pause when you talk in your talks, I pause, is because it takes a while. When you're speaking about the biggest thing there possibly can be. And that's like how a kid would say it. It's the biggest. When you're speaking about that, it's hard to come back. I remember there was one talk where there was a woman in the corner talking for a long time. You were wearing your jacket. It was cold. You were just with a bunch of students chatting. You had your whiteboard. And you were like, you weren't dismissing her, but you were saying like, okay, I've listened to you talk for 3 minutes about this, but now I want to go back to this. And it's like, I have no idea what I'm talking about right now. What was I saying? The idea is when you're talking about this, it's very difficult to focus for me.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is you're taking something and taking it completely out of focus. Like you do talk about a quantum fluctuation turning into a worm or a bee or a piece of wood.
Yeah.
But getting from there to there is awful hard to hold in your head.
Yeah.
Talk about.
I couldn't agree more. I'm 72. I've been thinking about this for decades, right? And I still feel like I'm just a little baby learning it for the first time.
Well, that's what Einstein said too. You know, you want to keep being a baby. That's the whole idea, I think. I think that's the whole idea. Because if you stop, then you're just going to the Bank of America to go to the ATM, I guess.
Yeah. But I think too, I mean, and this would be my speculation. I'm curious as to what you made of it. You know, I mean, I just love what you just said about how it's hard to keep in mind and hold it together. It really is. One of the things that's hard for me, and I use this as a way of remembering, you know, like 300,000 years ago, in a day, we were apes. Then the next day, we became human. You know, I'm just saying, if we go back, these they had the same brain size we have. And the anatomy was similar. And yet they were so different. And one of the things that really captured my imagination, they couldn't recall memories. And that, I used to joke when I was younger about how you're never going to go into a forest clearing and find a bunch of horses hanging around talking about what happened last week. It's just a joke, but to really take it in that we constructed a process for enabling us to bring forth events from the past into consciousness. That is a spectacular achievement. So my whole point here is to say, I think we're doing something similar now. I think you and I are, and the human race is in different ways. It's learning to inhabit a 14 billion year creative event. And that's a task that'll take, I think, centuries.
That's what you actually are about. What you just said right there is the core of what you're about.
Yeah.
But it's more fun for me. One of the things that I was thinking of now is, you ever walk around and you wonder why everyone has a tibia and a fibula, and they all have radius and ulna, and they all have clavicles, and they all have tails. Couldn't things have been different for some of them? How come we all have the same? We all have backbones. I mean, from the dinosaurs to a bird to a cat to a mouse to, until you get to bees and stuff, everybody has the same. Look here. This guy, Stan. My buddy Stan, my assistant. Everybody has those same things, right? What's the deal with that?
Yes. I don't think I'm going to tell you anything you don't already know, but the way I think of it is that the universe cherishes its finest achievements.
Exactly.
And it's just, it just, so that we're the end result of all this cosmic memory, all this cherishing, all these great things enable us, to have our experiences.
When last night when I was researching and looking at all your YouTubes, somehow you got stuck in with a bunch of Kurt Vonnegut ones, which is good company. And he was talking about he was trying to talk about the arc of different kinds of stories, and it was really funny. But he was saying, bottom line is, just take the time to stop and recognize this is fine. And he said he had this uncle, he said, he was just an insurance salesman in Indianapolis. Indianapolis was to Vonnegut what Puget Sound is to you. It's like,
yeah.
And he goes, he's just an insurance salesman, but we would do something like go fishing. And he goes, the bees were buzzing and it was warm and the sun was out and we'd have our lines in the water. And my uncle would turn to me and he would go, if this isn't fine, I don't know what is.
That's great. That's great.
And when I was walking to my office just now, it's raining and the leaves are blowing back and forth. And I just stopped at the window. I should have been getting ready. And I just stopped and looked out, looked at the leaves, looked at the rain. And then 10 minutes later, I realized, oh.
That is great. That's great.
Well, so this will be the last question. So we talk about, and it seems like we do have a lot of similarities, but when did you first, we're joking about this 70-year-old thing and all, what was the first moment in your life that you got this feeling?
It was, I would say the incipient one was around 4 or 5. I was in the upstairs. We had a little house. I was in the upstairs, and the bed was pushed next to the window, and there were these lacy curtains, and it was the stars. Looking up through the lacy curtains at the stars. And the thing is, I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, in the Northwest. You know, it's like Immanuel Kant said, or was it Immanuel Kant, that if the stars came out once a century, we'd be up all night in awe. Well, that's like Puget Sound area. See, there's so many clouds, you don't see the stars that often. But when I did, that's where I was affected. Oh, by the way, later on, I thought it was so bold of those stars to radiate all this beauty to me and determine my life without even asking me, you know.
Well, that's another way. That's a good way of looking at it. The universe is just this incredible act of generosity.
Yeah.
Well,
can we stop on that?
Yeah,
that is such a great ending point. No, I don't want to stop. I love talking with you, but God, what a great ending point.
I was thinking the same thing. Well, next time you write a book, obviously the title will have universe in it. But you can do the subtitle, the universe, an enormous act of generosity, or you can work on it. Oh, the word that Carl Sagan used was snappy. I mean, that you used for his letter.
Okay, snappy.
No, cheery. It was
cheery. Okay, yeah. There we go. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, all upbeat and yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, Brian. This was exactly what I had hoped it would be and more. So thank you so much. And the book
Sam, it's so great to meet you, really. I mean it.
Likewise.